I want to start by welcoming everyone who is joining in to our webinar session today. We have some that are continuing to join on in, and we're so glad to have you here on this Wednesday to have a virtual session, a webinar on building self esteem and resiliency in a digital age. This is hosted by Madison City Schools and our Mental Health Matters initiative. I am Stephanie Allen, and I'm our mental health services coordinator with Madison City Schools. And I am just so happy to be able to offer this amazing session for you today and for our partners from the Enrichment Center who will be presenting. Before we get started in the session, I want to go over just a few housekeeping items for our session today. Some of you may have joined our last webinar in February that was on about online dangers and prevention and support. And our theme this year in helping support our mental health needs has really been focused on technology and mental health. It's something that all of us can relate to who have kids or who work in the schools or just anyone who has any involvement with children and adolescents. So I'm really excited about building on that knowledge and leaning into learning about self-esteem and resiliency as well online and in just this digital world. So before we do that, just a couple things. Housekeeping, we are recording this session. Of course, you're not being recorded on camera, but our session content will be recorded. And then we are going to share that with you following the session. If you're signed up and registered for the webinar, then you'll receive an email at the end, probably by the end of today or tomorrow, with a link to the video, a link to a survey, and any resources, including the slideshow that our presenters share today. So you will get that information. Look out for that in an email. And you'll have my email as well. So if you have any questions, you can follow back with me there. We do have a post survey, and I encourage you to please take a few moments at the end of the webinar today to just answer a few questions about, was this helpful? And then even what you'd like to learn about more in the future. That really helps drive our planning and our ability to serve your needs. So please take time to do that. We have had this Mental Health Matters initiative in Madison City Schools for several years now, and it is truly a partnership and a collaboration between our schools and our Madison City Council of PTAs. We're so thankful for their support and involvement to go beyond supporting the students in the schools, but really reach out to the team of people in our community and our parents and our guardians and all those supportive adults out there who want to learn more about how to support our young people, how to support mental health. So this is just part of that larger initiative, but we're excited to be able to do these webinars. So thank you to Madison City PTA and for our Board of Education and our superintendent and our leadership here who are very supportive in our initiatives to support mental health. Speaking of, one of those partners that we are so thankful for is the Enrichment Center. And the Enrichment Center has had a longstanding relationship with Madison City Schools in providing school-based therapy. And they do much more than that too, including events like today, where they really help educate and advocate for our students. And I love that we get to hear from them based off of their knowledge, but also the experience of really working with students and being the ones that are there and walking through very difficult times and really seeing on the front lines of seeing what's going on with our students and our kids today. So I'm happy to introduce you to Allison Spratley. She is the executive director of the Enrichment Center, and Katie Holder, who is the clinical director of the Enrichment Center, as well as a school-based therapist. They are going to be the presenters today. So I'm going to stop talking so you can really learn from them. And I'm going to turn it over to them, but I just want to say thank you. And if you do have questions that might come up, they may get answered throughout the webinar. There is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You're welcome to submit a question there. And hopefully, if we have time at the end, we can address some of those questions that didn't get answered in our webinar today. So thank you for that. And I will turn it over to you, Allison and Katie. Thank you so much for being with us today.
It's a joy to be here with you all today. We're honored to have the opportunity to present. We always love being able to speak to parents and community members in our district partnerships. And this is a very important topic that we're grateful that we have the ability to speak to you about today. So before we get into the nitty gritty of the self-esteem and resiliency, I want to take a moment to tell you a little bit more about the Enrichment Center. As Stephanie mentioned, we are a mental health organization that provides school-based therapy services to students in grades K through 12. We currently serve Huntsville City Schools, Madison City Schools, and Madison County Schools. At every day, our vision and our purpose is to partner with schools to meet the mental health needs of our community's children. And we're very grateful for these community partnerships and these school district partners who allow us to be able to do the work that we are on a mission to do. And the daily mission of each of our therapists is to passionately walk with the students through these seasons of mental health struggle and equip them with the tools, support, and confidence to create a brighter future. Again, we are honored to be able to do this work in our community. And just to give you a little bit of a background as to how important this work is and how frequently we are serving the students in our community. This past fall semester, fall of 2024, we were able to serve 699 students with therapy services, and our team of therapists facilitated 5,701 therapy sessions with students in grades K through 12. So there's a lot of wonderful mental health work being done in our community. And we love having the opportunity to speak with the stakeholders, parents, guardians, and community members that also have an impact on these children's lives. So with that information, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Katie, our clinical director, who will be speaking to you about the internet and some digital age effects on self-esteem and resiliency. And I look forward to hearing any questions that you may have at the end.
Hello. Today, as Stephanie Allison said, we're going to be looking at children and the effect that the internet can have on self-esteem and resiliency. These are the objectives that we're going to cover. So first we're going to address what is self-esteem and what is resiliency. Then we're going to look at how the internet and social media in particular can affect self-esteem and resiliency. And then we'll end by looking at how we and how you as parents or just people in a child's life can help build a child's self-esteem and resilience while living in our digital world. And I'm going to try my best to make sure I'm speaking to younger children, but as well as what that can look like with teenagers. Okay, so first we're going to look at what is self-esteem. So according to the APA, the degree to which the qualities and characteristics contained in one's self-concept are perceived to be positive. So this is not just what a lot of times we think of, I think, with self-esteem of how I feel about my physical appearance, but it's also about our self-concept overall of our abilities and general qualities. So this point highlights that. It reflects a person's physical self-image, like we said, but also a view of their accomplishments, capabilities, and values and perceived success in living up to them, as well as the ways in which others view and respond to that. So it's a lot more layered than just our view of our physical self, even though that's definitely a big part of it. And a lot of times, I think where we see more of the signs if self-esteem is being impacted. So just as a review, because again, when talking about self-esteem, I think a lot of times we can kind of reduce it to be one or two things. So this is a reminder of things to look for that are good indicators of healthy self-esteem. And this is across the lifespan. So you look for this in children and teens, but also in adults. So the ability to recognize and accept your abilities and weaknesses. So that doesn't mean that you love your weaknesses or that you can't work on them or grow them, but you are able to say, this is an area that I struggle with or that I'm not as talented in, and you're able to recognize that. Realistic expectations of others and themselves. They're not overcritical. So a lot of times we will see where if someone is struggling with their self-esteem, they may outwardly criticize others a lot or themselves. The ability to make decisions with confidence, the ability to express opinions and needs, create and maintain healthy relationships, recognize and discontinue unhealthy relationships. I think this is one that we don't always focus on when we look at self-esteem and is really important. Really from a very early age, even in elementary school, we can see signs of if this indicates their level of self-esteem, but definitely gets very involved in those middle and high school years. And then able to admit when they have made a mistake without lashing out or punishing themselves. So on the flip side, we're going to look at what does low self-esteem look like. So these are the things while we're talking through these to think about the children, the teens in your life. And it doesn't mean that if they ever exhibit any of this, that means they're low. Their self-esteem is super low. It's more looking for patterns and or major changes in these things. So the first one is negative self-talk. So an example would be saying things like, I never do anything right, I can never get it right, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, those kind of statements. Feelings of being incompetent or unlovable. So this is one where you may not necessarily hear verbal expressions of this, but it may be when you're talking with them, they share feelings of that. Often seek validation from others, dismissive of positive feedback. So that doesn't necessarily mean that when they get positive feedback, they may be shy or they may have more of a humble personality. But dismissive is more of, let's say they've drawn a picture and you say, wow, I love the picture that you drew. And they say, oh, you're just saying that to make me feel good. Or maybe they say something even more intense, like, oh, I'm the worst artist. There's no way you like it. So more than just they're shy or that's kind of made them a little embarrassed. They just attempt to dismiss it. An intense fear of failure. A lot of times children or teens with low self-esteem, academically, you may see that they procrastinate a lot or they have low motivation. A lot of times is how low self-esteem can present, because the underlying thought is that they're so afraid of failure, it's just hard for them to try and they just avoid it. Outwardly critical of self and or others, like we talked about on the last slide. Typically, it's more common that they'll be more critical of themselves, but definitely not uncommon for them to be critical of others. They may struggle to set healthy boundaries in relationships, constant comparing, not just with social media, but just in their day-to-day life. Sensitive to feedback, and they may personalize everything. So this is talking more of when something negative happens in their life, even if it's not directly, could not be directly caused by them, that you may hear them saying things like, well, these things always happen to me, or bad things are always happening. And so they see it as they have been the cause in some way. And then the last one on this list is social withdrawal or isolation, and that can be an indicator as well. So now we're going to look at what is resilience. Again, according to the APA, resilience is the process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility and adjustment to external and internal demands. So this is, in summary, your ability to process and work through challenges and to be able to do that in a way where you're in a healthy way coping mentally and emotionally. And ideally, when you get to the other side of that challenge, you have more of that self-confidence and self-esteem because you are proud of the progress you made, and you know, I made it through this, I can make it through a lot of things because I overcame this challenge. A number of factors contribute to how well people adapt to adversities, including the ways in which individuals view and engage with the world, the availability and quality of social resources, and specific coping skills. So, we're about to talk about this a little more on a following slide, but I think in this presentation, and maybe when you come to the word of resilience, you don't think of this, but a lot of people, when they hear resilience, do think about trauma. And for our purposes of this presentation, we're really talking about true, just general resilience, which all people can have and that all people can grow in. And a big indicator of how resilient a child or a teen or adult will be is the quality of their social support and the coping skills that they have. And I thought this third point was really important, especially for our discussion today. But psychological research demonstrates that the resources and skills associated with resilience can be cultivated and practiced. So I think a lot of times people will think that resilient people is how they might label someone or born that way, but it's really a skill that you can cultivate and grow, which is great news because it's something that, again, today we're going to talk about how we can do that. So this slide says children are resilient. This is a very common thing that I think a lot of us have probably heard people say about children. And I would encourage you to replace that with the statement I've included here, which is children are actually very vulnerable and they are capable of great resilience when they have a safe and healthy support system that allows them to face appropriate challenges. So I think it's different to say, and this is more leaning into that trauma piece of people, a lot of people have survived a lot of things, but resilience is really the goal of making sure that they don't just survive things, but that they can grow through them and they can increase their self-esteem, their self-confidence in a safe way. So that's what we're going to be looking at, is how you can create resilience where they will go through hard things, not specifically today talking about trauma, but go through hard experiences and challenges, and how can we help them to grow that resilience. So here's some practical examples, again, to kind of help frame not just looking at trauma, but in general life, what resilience looks like. So the first one is a middle school student is able to identify that she is struggling in algebra. She seeks help from her teacher and completes the extra practice work provided. She persists until she sees some progress. So this shows that she has the self-confidence and the level of self-esteem to identify, okay, I am struggling in algebra, and that's okay. Some people struggle with that. So what I can do is reach out to my teacher, let her know that I need help. And then when that extra practice work is provided, she had the ability to do that and to keep working on it, to persist and not give up, even if she felt like it might be too hard. The next one is a high school student is bullied by another student. She's able to identify that the relationship is unhealthy. She seeks support from trusted adults and moves on to build new healthy relationships. So I think this is, again, all three of these are an example of where I think we want the children, teens in our lives to be able to do for them. So this example, again, the student's able to identify where this relationship is not healthy for them, and they have been informed of the red flags or made aware of ways they should not be treated, and they know how to get that help. And then the last one is an elementary student becomes angry when another student takes his toy. He recognized that he is angry, and through that recognition and his learned coping skills, he knows how to handle those emotions. So he may walk away, take a deep breath, and he moves through those emotions without making a poor choice. So now that we've talked about self-esteem and resiliency and kind of laid the groundwork for those, let's look at the internet's effect specifically on self-esteem and resiliency. So I always like to share, if we're doing a presentation on internet use, I think it's always important for parents to hear about the current statistics, because I think I know when we've done these in the past, I've gotten a lot of feedback that people were surprised by these, or at least one or two of them. But the first one is 96% of teens report using the internet daily. So a lot of times they use it at school, but this is talking about outside of school. 46% of those teens, this is from that same study, reported using it almost constantly. 40% of 8 to 12-year-olds use social media. This is one that I like to include because most social media sites advertise that you need to be 13 years old or older to use it. So this shows that a lot of kids, which we know they know how to do, will either just click that they're 13 or that their parents have helped them sign up. So that's something to just be aware of, is that a lot of these sites, they verbally publicly state that people under 13, they don't recommend they use those sites. 1 in 3 children have been cyberbullied. And a 2021 study found that 1 in 6 of the people surveyed were victims of online child sexual abuse before the age of 18. So that was a very in-depth study that looked at all different types of abuse. It was from anything from exposure to sexually explicit material, as well as people trying to get in contact with them and meet up with them. And then 60% of parents say that they trust their kids to make good decisions online. And about 1 in 4 children have been cyberbullied more than once. So these two on this slide are more specific to how the internet and social media impact self-esteem. So a 2021 CDC report, I couldn't find anything more recent than that that has been published yet, but it found that 57% of teen girls in the US felt persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness, in large part due to internet use. So they did recognize it wasn't all from the internet, but they found that all of them indicated that they even thought that a lot of it was from the internet. And then a study found that reducing social media use by 50%, and 50% from whatever that baseline was for that child, significantly improved how the participants felt about their weight and overall appearance. So that's one that, as parents, if you're more interested in looking at studies specifically related to self-esteem, in social media, there are a lot of studies that are being done looking at that, and they've definitely found strong correlations between the two. So the impact, this is a quick list of the impact of internet use on self-esteem and emotions, things to consider. So social media does have a tendency to foster body image issues and overall internet use in general. A lot of children and teens, their brain is developing. For them, the now is their whole perspective and worldview. They do not have the life experience to be able to compare what they're going through to something they went through in their past. So a lot of times they take what they see as just reality and struggle more with those judgment skills. So whatever they see presented by a celebrity they follow or in a movie, they may just take as fact, even though we as an adult may know that that is not an accurate portrayal of how that person even looks in real life. But as we talked about with the statistics, they are more likely to have exposure to bullying through cyberbullying when they're on the internet. It can promote unhealthy comparisons, especially on social media. If they're seeing their friends share only their highlight reel, as we would say, of their life, where it's only the good or the pretty things happening. They may experience FOMO, as a lot of people call it, or the fear of missing out. So used to, if your friends had a sleepover and they didn't invite you, then you might not know. But now it's more common where you might be aware of what you're not being invited to or missing out on with peers. Sleep disturbance is a really big issue that can occur with internet use, especially I would say with younger children. If their device time is not as controlled, then they can have a tendency to just keep playing till they crash. And that can happen with teenagers, but sometimes teenagers, they are gaining some of that insight into, well, I probably should get to sleep so I don't feel bad tomorrow, or so I can get this done. It also can lead to a decreased attention span and concentration overall, which we can see impact them academically. Excessive use and addiction are definitely more and more studies are being done to see what that can look like with younger children. And then just overall exposure to disturbing and upsetting material. So the rest of the time, we're going to focus on how in this digital world where we're not going to get rid of the internet, we're not getting rid of these devices, how can we build our children's and teens' self-esteem and resilience while living in this world with the internet? This is a quote that Allison found it, and I thought it was great that we wanted to put in the presentation that says, yet the single best predictor of resilience in children exposed to adversity is the presence of one or more safe, stable, and nurturing caregivers in their lives. And that's what you're going to hear me saying over and over again for the rest of this presentation. But the number one thing you can do is be involved in your kid's life, to take care of yourself, to model the behaviors and patterns you want to see, and to be involved, talk to them, be interested in what they're doing. And the more that you build that relationship and rapport with them, the more likely they are to share with you where you can help. Establishing a strong caregiver-child relationship early in life is crucial for children. And early experiences shape brain architecture, gene expression, and physiological stress. So there's a whole rabbit hole we could go down that we don't have time for today. But in general, from a very young age, children are watching how you respond to things. And when you are involved in their life and you are showing that you care for them with your time, with your energy, when you're being present with them, and you are interested in what they're doing, and y'all are talking openly about things, then that is the number one thing you can do to build their self-esteem and resilience. So we have 6 points that we're going to look at. And at the end, if we have time, is when we'll have questions. So the first one, again, I said I was going to say it a lot, is make connections. So this is with you as a trusted adult in their life, but also encouraging them to have in-person connection. So a lot of times when kids are developing that lower self-esteem or struggling with that, they do have that tendency to isolate. And a lot of times in this digital age, they can feel like they are very connected because they're seeing everything their friends post, they're playing video games while they're talking to their friends, but that's not a replacement for that in-person connection. So really emphasizing that and emphasizing empathy and listening to others. And then foster that further connection. So in an appropriate way, when they do have those in-person friends, like maybe they play a sport and they become close to some of those kids they play soccer with, then fostering a way appropriately where they could call them every once in a while or get on FaceTime. So you're using the tools that their peers are using, but it's managed, and that's not the only way they interact with those people. The second one is an emphasis on serving others. So we want to engage children and teens in age-appropriate volunteer work. A huge part of productive self-care is finding ways to also focus on other people. So from an early age, if children are learning the importance of helping others, serving others, then it will help them to actually process their own stress and their own struggles, because they won't feel so alone or isolated, and they'll have a comparison. They'll be able to see that they're not the only people who struggle or who are going through different things. Provide them with appropriate responsibilities at home. This again builds that self-esteem. They're able to have confidence in their abilities and they'll be proud of what they've accomplished. And then encourage them to help and appropriately support their peers. I put appropriately because, as Stephanie said, I am a school-based therapist, and I have seen times where children, while they're learning about relationships and how best to help and protect their friends, sometimes they can take it upon themselves to help in a way that really an adult should get involved. So I think that's important, really talking about what friendships should look like at each age and stage. And then create and model a healthy routine. So this is definitely one where, as much as you can model this for them, that's very helpful. But providing, especially for the younger children, a consistent routine is very helpful for them. Prioritizing sleep. Again, the internet technology is a part of our life. So just finding a way to make it manageable, realistic, but where you do have breaks from it. It does serve the purposes that it has, which can be just for fun, but that they have their set times. And that maybe there are days each week where that's not something that we do. But that, depending on each family, is how you decide what is best for them. Some kids can handle more device time than others. So that's where being involved with them, being able to recognize their patterns is really helpful. And then number 4, teach them about self-care, which a lot of times goes kind of with this managing a schedule, providing a routine. I think these go hand in hand because a lot of self-care, which is seen as very preventative, if you're taking care of yourself, then that's going to help you to be your best self. It's going to help you to manage stress in the best way. But a lot of that does center around your basic needs. So prioritizing sleep, nutritious foods, and exercise. Also helping kids to learn how to manage their time. This is obviously a skill that's used as in the adult world when they get jobs and have careers and different things in their life as adults. Now is a time they can start practicing that, identifying their specific triggers and tendencies. So as a parent, you may be able to identify, when they do this activity or when they have gone this long without sleep or whatever their triggers may be, recognizing that, sharing that with them, and y'all working together to come up with plans that help them to set themselves up for success. And then, like I've already mentioned, a big part of self-care is also knowing how to set healthy boundaries. So talking to them from a young age about how they should be treated, how they should treat others, red flags of when they need to get an adult involved and to help them. And then number 5 is keep things in perspective. So again, I think, as I said earlier with the list of ways social media can impact youth, a big thing that they are, for lack of a better way to put it, is missing, and where having those trusted adults is a lot of times such a huge impact. As adults, you all can provide that perspective for them, because when they're struggling with something, if they are having a hard time with their self-esteem and they're comparing themselves to their friends, or they're saying, I can't, all my friends are doing this and I can't do it, helping them see the big picture of right now is not the rest of their life, and sharing appropriately things you struggle with or how you might have experienced that at their age as well. But really working to try to respond, to meet them where they are and address what they're sharing, but to try to also be that person that's providing that big picture objective perspective and maintaining a hopeful outlook for them. And then the last one, number 6, is help them to grow their self-confidence. This one, a lot of times, is hard because it involves allowing them to take on appropriate challenges. So not necessarily, when it's appropriate, fixing things for them or solving the problem for them, but allow them to try things on their own. acknowledge when you see that they've accomplished something hard. That I think means more a lot of times to kids, especially as they're getting older, than just a regular compliment of you're really good at math or you're really good at this sport. But to say, like, I know that this class was really hard for you, and I'm really impressed with how you pushed through that and worked on that. Um, but this really helps them to trust themselves to solve problems and make appropriate decisions, and will just really help to grow them into a very healthy adult if they are protected by the adults in their life and it's manageable, but they are able to take on some challenges. So this is the last slide I wanted to leave you all with, is specific to technology, just some quick points of the things that when you're looking at self-esteem and resiliency, the things I would love for you to consider implementing or just as reminders. So the first one is limit technology use and set clear expectations. I've worked with a lot of kids who, while we've been meeting, their parents have implemented new expectations at home. And every single time, even if the child was upset at first, that became the new normal and they adapted. Ensure that limited technology use is age appropriate. So just because something says it's for children, it's always a good idea to look into it before your child is exposed. Discuss internet safety in your home. Talk to them about if someone is to try and reach out to you and you don't know who they are, what the plan is, what they're going to do. Model the behavior that you want to see. So trying to be mindful of your own technology use and being present with them. Spend time together without devices. So whenever, kind of like when we talked about with managing a routine, I think that's a great idea to have set afternoons or days where you don't use devices, or maybe you say, we're only going to play video games on these days, but these other days we're going to do this together outside, or we're going to have a game night with board games. Encourage in-person activities with family and peers, like we mentioned at the beginning of our list. And then the big emphasis of displaying genuine interest in their interests. And yes, that does include their technology interests. And if you get involved in that, if they're sharing with you, these are my favorite YouTubers, I really like this TikTok trend. And the more that you show genuine interest in that, they will pull you in, and you will then just be more aware of what they're being exposed to and what they have coming into their brains and into their thoughts. So that is the end of our prepared slides. I know that we had time for questions. I didn't know, Stephanie, did you want me to, what did you want me to do next with that?
Yes, thank you so much, Katie. I just so thankful to hear from you. I am going to give, since we do have a few moments here at the end, if you have a question that you want to drop in the Q&A box, I can look at those and share those with Katie. I don't see any right now, Katie, but I'll give people just a second to do that. And one of the questions that I had, just in sharing and thinking about this as a mom too, is if you had any specific recommendations on how to respond to negative self-talk. So when you have that child that says, that negative self-talk, are there some statements or things in your toolbox that you could share with us that might be a way? I know sometimes I use like a joking method. I'll say, don't talk about my kid like that, but just kind of wondering if there's any suggestions you have for us there. And then I'll monitor some of the other questions coming in.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yes, thank you. I think similar to you in a session setting, if I'm in a therapy session and I have good rapport with a kid, that is the joking way, is a way that I like to take it a lot of times, to where, again, a lot of times that indicates that their self-esteem is lower. So I don't want them to think they're in trouble, but I'll kind of make that joke of, I was like, oh, well, you're my friend and we don't talk that way about my friends kind of way. I think another way to address it is helping them see that how they would talk to someone else that they care about, asking them if your friend did this, or if I, as someone you love, did this, what would you say to me? And having them practice that out loud, and then helping them just to reflect on how when people talk to us that way, it doesn't motivate us, it doesn't necessarily help us to change those behaviors. So it's the same with how we talk to ourselves.
Mm. I love that. Thank you. That's a good way to put it too, is how would you talk to a friend or and help
Mhm.
them see it that way. Thank you, Katie. We do have a couple questions. One is, are you seeing kids with a higher or lower self-esteem? Is the trend line up or down? So any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I would say, I think I mentioned when we were looking at those studies and statistics for self-esteem. I know from just the studies I've seen, I think the national trend is definitely that it's the low self-esteem is on the rise. I think that's where a lot of these studies are available because the experts are really looking into that. Um, and they are finding that the correlation with that is typically internet use, specifically social media use. I would say that in my personal experience as a school-based therapist, I have seen a pretty common trend with especially elementary age students where the low self-esteem comes from more of an academic standpoint. A lot of times, if they're not as involved with the internet, it may just be their personality, their tendency to be goal oriented or task driven. So their academic performance is a big part of their personal identity. So if that's helpful for parents to know, I think that's something, how we talk about academic success at home, I think is really important, that we are not our grades, that grades are very important, but they're not our identity either.
Yeah, that's great. That's very helpful, Katie. And I think in our mental health matters team planning this, that was one of the reasons, is seeing that increase of low self-esteem. But that's part of why we partnered it. I love how you connected the resiliency piece, in that one of the things that really stood out to me is that can be cultivated and practiced. And I see a lot in the schools where we have students who um, have a hard time moving beyond a challenge.
Mhm.
And you've spoken a lot into that today, where is the I can't do this, or when they feel like they don't know how, or that they're not going to be good at it, instead
Mhm.
of trying and failing, or trying and not being good, they just rather not try at all.
Mhm.
And we see that in the academic world for sure, but it impacts a lot of different areas. So I think that piece of how we can support and teach that resiliency, how we can practice that with them, is so, so important. So we have another question here about just recommendations as far as social media for young teens. Which ones are most appropriate, or if there's any to avoid?
Okay, great question.
That's a big question, right?
Yes, I saw that. So I'm over here. You might see my eyes. I was pulling up. We have another presentation that we do that's, I would say, more focused on internet safety. So I did pull up a slide to look at that. And if it's not already on our website, I can add that one there. Our website's at the bottom of this slide on the screen. So if anyone wants to go there, we have resources. But I will add this one on there if it's already not already. So I will say, not, this is probably not directly answering your question, but YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat are the top four. Currently, those are the ones that most teens and even younger kids are using. So I would say, as a parent, I would really pay attention to, are they using those four, and what can I do to be aware of their use and manage that. Um, there are a lot of, something I've found in that presentation is that a lot of social media sites today have dating app capabilities, and a lot of parents aren't aware of that. So one of them is there is one through Snapchat, but there are several social media sites like that where there are dating app capabilities that you would want to watch out for. But in general, if you are, like I said, if you're involved in what they're using and you're paying attention to that, then I would say that's the biggest safeguard is to ask them about it, have them show you things they're watching and doing. But like I said, I'll put that presentation on there. It also includes different apps and websites that you can use to help manage apps, or even look up what parents might want to know about them. Because I know those things are always changing. There's new trends, new apps they're interested in a lot.
Yeah, that's a great point, Katie. I think to that question, there's always something new coming out. And we did our webinar in February, focused a lot on the online dangers. And so there was some discussion about some specific apps that can be more dangerous in that regards for teenagers. And all of that information is also on our Mental Health Matters webpage. So make sure you check that out there from the Madison City Schools homepage. You can go to the Parents and Students tab and then Mental Health Matters. And we have the previous, some previous webinars, some previous information on the specific online dangers and prevention and support there that might be very helpful. As well as thank you again, Katie and Allison, for allowing us to share this presentation and the resources out. So great question.
One quick thing about that. One of the things that we share on our website, there is a resources tab, and there's resources for parents, for students, and for teachers. And on the student resource tab, we do sometimes have our therapists do a little bit of a deep dive into different Instagram pages and things like that. And there is a list on there of some, for example, Instagram pages that we recommend in terms of saying, if you're going to be on Instagram, maybe just sprinkle in a few of these feel good pages that we trust and that we've kind of looked through, as opposed to, not having any of those in your feed. So you may want to have your student, if they're, a teen, or they are on Instagram or things like that, you may just want to have them look through that list as well, and they could see if those are any of the people that they're following.
That's good. Well, thank you all who have joined us today. Again, we're going to have these resources available to you, both the video of the webinar, the slides from the webinar, and any additional resources, including the Enrichment Center's website. I'll share that in the email, as well as our Mental Health Matters page. So I'm hoping that will point you in the right direction. If you have any other follow-up questions, you can also email us following this presentation as well. It has been a wonderful way to learn, to learn more, to look at and consider. I thank you all who were able to join in, just giving your time to learn more about how to support our young people and build that self-esteem and build that resiliency. I love the emphasis on that personal connection, no matter if you're an educator or a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or a coach or a mentor to a youth or a child. You can make a tremendous difference in their life by cultivating that relationship and connection piece and modeling that behavior for them. So thank you all for joining. Before we close out, Katie or Allison, do you have anything else to say? Okay, great job today. Thanks again. And thank you all for being here. If you have a moment, please complete the survey at the very end. When we end this webinar today, you'll be able to fill that out. And we appreciate that. All right. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.